Today I want to talk to you about entities and attachments because there's a surprising place where entities hang out, and as obvious as it is, you're going to overlook it. So I'm going to talk to you today about the surprising location where entities are that's so obvious when I share it with you, but so overlooked. The second thing that I'm going to talk to you about is the wrong conclusion that people are going to jump to the moment they hear that location. So stay tuned. Because a lot of the time people listen to the first little snippet and they go, okay, well, now I've got the hidden location of these entities. Now I know what to do and I know where they are. The second piece of information is going to help you to get the big picture, which you need to understand this fully. The third part of today's conversation is perhaps the most important, because I want to talk to you about what is it actually that entities do? What do they do in your field? Well, one of the things that they do is they feed off of your energy, just like a parasite would. But how do they show up? Because they don't show up as the big scary monster. And a lot of the time, there's things that you do that you might feel deep shame for or remorse for that may not necessarily originate with you. So we'll talk about that at the end. But the first piece of today's conversation, where is the surprising location that entities and attachments hang out? That's so obvious, but you can't see it. Well, before I tell you where exactly that is, and you will laugh because it is so obvious, I want to share with you really quickly. There's two playlists on my channel. The one is about the ego. The one is about the false matrix. Those two conversations go hand in hand, but you need to have an understanding of what the ego really is and what the false matrix is. The false matrix is a reality field set up by the archons, malevolent beings who believed that they were gods or could be God. They set up this playground called the false matrix. The only part of you that could ever navigate the false matrix was the ego. The false self was set up to navigate the false matrix. The true self cannot navigate the false matrix without eroding the false matrix, because why? The nature of truth is such that it highlights the lie and dissolves the lie. The organic matrix, which is another way of saying the original God source creation template. That's the place that when people say, oh, I want to go home, I'm longing for home. That's what they're longing for. They're longing for not necessarily a place, but the memory of the state of being that we originated in, wherein harmony was the order of the day. So was love, so was compassion, so was honesty. You were an open book. Everyone around you was an open book. Nothing was hidden. Love was everywhere. That's the original creation matrix, also known as the organic or the true matrix. The true self navigates the true matrix, but the ego cannot, because in the presence of truth, a lie cannot be maintained. It will automatically spin itself out into the nothingness from whence it comes. So that's a brief background on the false matrix and the true matrix. But why am I telling you this? What's this got to do with attachments? Well, what is your ego? The ego is the you that you are not. It is the you that was set up to navigate the false matrix. It's also the you that experienced a tremendous amount of pain. And that's one thing, to experience a tremendous amount of pain. But what happens, and this is what creates the ego, is the ego in its unhealedness begins to develop a sense of identity and a sense of attachment to the stories that it's walked through. So it begins to confuse what it's walked through, the pains, the traumas, the betrayals that it's walked through for its own self. So instead of saying, well, I had this traumatic event happen to me, the ego begins to say, well, I am the product of this trauma. And therefore, without the trauma, from the ego's perspective, I cease to be. So the ego is very attached to the story. And you'll see this. You'll see a lot of people defending their story. And I want to give you two examples of how you attach. So what I'm saying to you is, where you attach to your story, an attachment or an entity comes in. So where you attach to pain, an attachment finds a food source, finds a fuel supply. And so the two of you essentially land up attaching to exactly the same thing. It's just that it's not the true self attaching, because the true self would never attach. It's the false self. But I said I wanted to give you an example. An example of how you might attach to things. Well, there's two. The first one, and by the way, there's more. I'm just going to give you two now, two of the most obvious. The first one is you attach to things that you've walked through and you create an identity around this. So here's an example. Somebody got hit by a motor car, right? They broke their hip. And the person driving the car was a negligent driver, let's say. Hypothetical situation, right? That person, when they become so connected, entangled to their pain, they begin to identify with the pain as if that's who they are, because it's all that they know. It's not a bad thing. It's not to say, oh, you failed because you attached to the pain. No, this is what human beings were designed to do in the false matrix. This is what the ego was designed to do. This is what puffs the ego up and feeds the ego and prevents the true self from ever coming in. So the attachment in this scenario runs out, and when I say the attachment, it's your attachment to the story and the pain of the story, as well as the entity who's attaching to the energy of that pain and drawing from it. That attachment, so both of those, go out into the world as your identity. They go out into the world and they, in essence, meet people before you do. And you know what I mean by that? When you instantly meet someone, like, hey, Henry, this is Jane. Jane meet Henry, Henry meet Jane. In that instant, you've summed up so much about each other. That is because you're reading information about the other person, not with your brain. None of this goes into the conscious conversation. This is all at the gut level, instinctual level. So you have a liking for or a disliking for a person because they've energetically introduced themselves to you. So the attachment becomes the energetic introduction. And that energetic introduction, when there is no true self, will go out ahead of you in this world, and it will be your energy that you meet people with, that you face the world with. The attachment to the story, now in that hypothetical example where someone's been hit by the car, they're going to meet somebody and they're going to go, energetically of course, I was hit by a motor car, I don't trust people, I don't feel safe around people, I live in constant pain, my hip is always sore, everything related to that story, and many, many others. My mom and dad got divorced when I was 12, this happened, that happened, all of the traumas, which is everything you've attached to. That goes out into the world and it meets people and it greets people and it interfaces with the world as you. And you start seeing no difference between the story that you're attached to and the real you. The real you lands up being in the background, unheard. Absolutely unacknowledged, unseen, unheard. And because you live in a free will universe, a free will world, your free will is going to keep drawing upon the traumas, keep drawing upon that which you are attached to. So that's the first example. The attachment becomes the identity. The attachment becomes embedded, intertangled, intertwined with the identity, and you land up introducing yourself to the world as the traumas that you've walked through. Even if you hide all of that, because you might say, oh no, I don't tell people in this example, I was hit by a motor car, my hip hurts. But no, this is not what your words say. This is what your energy says, because it's what you believe you are, because the pain was so big. That's the first thing. The second place in which attachment happens is where you get defensive. Look at what you defend. Look at what you're sensitive about. Look at what really hurts you. Look at what really triggers you when people say certain things. Here's an example. I recently put up a video about affirmations. And I'll link that video. You can watch it if you feel called to. But in that video, in the comments section, a very beautiful woman, by the way, really, really special, beautiful woman said, look, Kerry, I really like you. But hell, I've always used affirmations. I believe in affirmations. This is my perspective. Bam. And that's perfectly fine. That was her perspective. But what happens when I'm showing you, listen, if you thought that worked, could you try this? Huh? Could you try something higher? Could you try something beyond what you know? No. When the ego is involved, it cannot. When the ego is involved, it's going to defend what it knows. No, this works for me. Don't want to go beyond that. Don't want to look beyond that. Don't want to know anything outside of this. That's a defensiveness. You always defend the ego because the truth needs no defense. The truth never needs to defend itself, but the lie does. So when you feel very defensive about something and you land up going, no, this is wrong. How dare you say this? Whatever it might be, what you're getting yourself riled up about, what you're defending in the world is the ego's story. So that's another example of where attachments become very, very evident. But here is where everyone's going to jump to the wrong conclusion, because we get too clever for our own damn good. We get too linear, we get too logical, and we go, okay, because we're such logical things, Kerry's given me a problem. I'm going to create a solution. The problem is when we're attached to something, we invite attachments in. So the solution is obvious, but it's not. Many people would jump to the wrong conclusion and say, therefore, I must just become non-attached. So that's the key. Non-attachment must be the key. No, it isn't. If you try, if that's your goal, okay, so now I need to be non-attached. It's the equivalent of me saying, look, whatever you do, don't think about the color pink. Don't think pink. Whatever you do, do not think pink. Think anything. But you know all those glorious shades of pink, from the lightest, those soft baby pinks, to the brightest cerise. Don't. You know you're going to think pink. You're going to think pink because I'm telling you not to do it. So it's the same thing when you go, I mustn't attach. That's the wrong thing. Attachment is wrong. Oh, why am I attaching? What's going to happen? You're going to amplify everything that you're attached to. So the answer is not. Okay, let's be logical about this and let's just not be attached to anything. This is why so many people take spiritual truths, take spiritual information and use it to get themselves lost. Because they're bringing their linearity and their logic into the equation where it does not belong. The answer is not to become attached to nothing. The answer is to connect to the truth of you, to drop the story. And when you drop the story and everything that defines you, you find the real you. Do you see? This is not about, I mustn't do this. This is about, I must be the true self. That's the mission. The mission is, if the false self was the me navigating the false matrix, then who is the true self and how do I be the true self? And my online community exists to answer that question. It's established to give people a safe haven in which they can be guided. Because you think you know all these answers because you're working from the brain, from the linearity. But there are so many nuances and so many intricacies and so many subtleties that are not obvious. Spirituality is not meant to be a maze. It's meant to be simple. But we're not yet wired for that level of simplicity. In fact, it trips us up. So, as much as I'm giving you a simple answer, it's not non-attachment. It is connection to the true self. Understand that for all of its simplicity, that will require daily devotion from you. That will require purpose from you. That will require direction from you. You can join my online community. You can join your own online community. You can do whatever you want to do, so long as you know that that's where you're headed. That's the goal. Now, the third part of today's conversation is, okay, how are these entities showing up? Most of the time, not in obvious ways. Most of the time, very covert. They pose as you. Their modus operandi is to stay hidden. Their MO is how can I camouflage myself to blend in as you, the person I'm attached to? That's the entity's thinking. Because of course, the more it does that, the less you're going to find it. Just like the ego. The more you believe that the ego is you, the more you're not going to look for a true self, because why would you look for a true self when you're convinced that the ego is you? So this journey requires humility. It requires you to get so humble and to go, hey, maybe I don't know what I think I know. Maybe what I think I know is a drop in the bucket or not even. Maybe you can let yourself come into that ponderance Maybe I know nothing. And then what? Well, then you're actually very free and very liberated, because you no longer are obedient to the shackles of other people's truths and other people's stories. You see, this goes very hand in hand with that idea about non-attachment. But how do those entities show up? Well, a lot of the time, the thoughts and the food cravings that you have, the beliefs that you have, those obstinate beliefs that you will not negotiate on because by God you are right. That's the stuff of ego. That's the stuff of entities. Wherever there is ego, there is entities. The two go hand in hand, because if you had only the ego without the attachments, without the entities connected to it, because remember, they cannot feed on the true self, the entities. They can only feed on the ego, which is connected to the true self. So the ego, think of it as a middleman, right? Between you and the entities. So they feed off of that ego, and they manipulate the ego to get the ego to eat the food, to crave the sugars, or whatever it is. Many people have addictions to certain foods, or addictions in general. What is it that pulses and pushes in you that says, I've got to get that fix, I've got to get that thing? That is an entity looking for its fix. That is an entity looking for its next meal, because when you go into addictive behavior, it's the ego taking over. And anytime that the ego is very dominant, attachments and entities are too. So these entities and attachments, they pose as you, they make you feed them, they speak as you. Because a lot of the time, you might get super defensive, super triggered, say things that are perhaps unbecoming, or not say things. In other words, thoughts that you have that you're too ashamed to even utter. Visual images that you have. Why? Entities do this. Entities use this as a means of triggering shame and guilt, because that's a great meal for them. That's a great energy for them. They cannot feed on love. That's too high a frequency. So you being connected just by a sliver to the organic matrix. Did you know that? You are connected by a sliver to the organic matrix, which is what gives you your ability to create. Because beings of darkness cannot create, but you can. So that tells you you're not a being of darkness. You're just in a dark world, confused in your identity for being a dark being. So the entities, they're feeding off of that energy that the divine matrix brings in, but they cannot feed of it in its purity, in its love, in its higher wisdom, higher intelligence. They cannot feed off of that. So they need a more watered down version. Things like the denser guilt, shame, the convoluted feelings, the convoluted emotions, all of that becomes their feeding ground. So do you see that a lot of the time, you feel shame and guilt for what is not even you? And I know there's going to be people that say, but then how do you know? How do you know what's you and how do you know what's entity? It's simple, actually. What is ego? Whatever the ego is doing, and it's so easy to see the ego once you've seen the true self. Because the true self acts in a way that is so different to the ego. The true self is always humble, kind, loving, expects nothing back, would belittle no one, is very quiet. And yet in its quietness, God, it speaks, it reverberates, it pulsates. It's the most undeniable thing. When you're in the presence of your true self or somebody else in their true self, you feel it. You're moved by it. And when you feel the contrast of the true you that you are to the you that you've been posing as, then you're going to know, I see my ego. And when you see your ego, don't judge it. Because what are you going to do? Judgment feeds and fuels ego. And then you become attached to the judgment, and we're back to square one again. You've created more room for attachments. So how do you get rid of the ego? What are you supposed to do with the ego? Exactly the same thing that you do with overcoming attachments, and that is connect to the true self. But once again, I implore you to understand that that is not you clicking your fingers and going, hey, true self, let's go, let's connect, let's do this thing. That is a daily observation, a daily focus. It's a mastery. And when you commit to yourself and you invest in yourself and you let yourself be guided into the truth, the highest truth, which is so far beyond what you've ever reached, where you think you can go. Imagine that. Imagine the best place, the highest love that you've ever been in. Imagine if I said to you, that's not even a tip of the iceberg. The true you is so wildly magnificent, loving, divine in its essence that if you were to see it and be in its presence, you would fall to your knees and weep. If you knew that that was your true self, and that all you had to do is be that, you would understand what's at stake. And you would understand, that's the me that I'm here to connect to, because that's exactly the truth. Lots of love, everyone. Thank you for sharing this conversation with me. Bye-bye for now.